Hello, and welcome to EWTN News' ongoing coverage of the Pan-Amazonian Synod here from Rome. I'm Matthew Bunson, Executive Editor for EWTN News, continuing our conversations about what's happening every day in the Synod here just not too far from this studio. I'm joined once again by Edward Penton, Rome correspondent for the National Catholic Register. Edward, welcome back.
Thanks, good to be with you.
Well, we've had two congregations that have taken place. In other words, we've had two sessions of the Synod of Bishops.
Yes.
What have been some of the results?
Well, we've had discussion the last two sessions about the crucial issue of bringing the Eucharist to those remote areas in the Amazon. That seemed to have figured quite highly in these discussions, and they've talked about the importance of having not two classes of the Eucharist, that those who have access aren't sort of first-class believers and the second class who don't. And so they're really trying to push this this measure, if you like, whatever it might end up being, to bring the Eucharist to these remote areas, but also by really trying to take it to the people, but to do it in a way which I think obviously doesn't upset too many people. There was some opposition, I think, from in the hall to this proposal, to this idea of having married clergy,
Right.
ordained mature married men, and that's of some concern to people, as we know.
So you're referring in a way, too, to the document that is released every day by the Sala Stampa, the Holy See Press Office, which is a synthesis of all of the speeches, the so-called interventions that take place throughout the course of the Synod deliberations.
Yes.
And one of the items that was specifically mentioned that several Synod fathers, or at least Synod speakers, addressed the possibility of married priests of very probati, in other words, taking
Yes.
seasoned men
That's right.
who are respected and ordaining them as a way of perhaps solving some of the pastoral solutions. What was striking about that synthesis, and again, we don't know the exact details of how all of this is playing out in the Synod Hall, was that there was a bit of pushback that why do we need to sort of eradicate or destroy what we have, trying to find a pastoral solution when we should perhaps be pursuing more creative solutions.
Yes, and this has been a constant argument, and what some people are arguing is that what's needed is evangelization more than filling the gaps with ordaining married men who won't, and there's concern about the formation that they might get. If you're going to suddenly ordain them, they won't go to seminary, they'll just be ordained to carry out these particular aspects of ministry. So that is of concern. But then there was also seemed to be quite a lot of focus on the Eucharist building the church, and that was very much emphasized. The Eucharist builds the church. Actually, this is something John Paul said, and they've been speaking a lot about that and the fact that if you're going to build a church, you need a permanent presence there. It can't be someone who just visits and comes in and out. And so there's this. You can see a certain amount of pressure being put on to have this measure put in place. But we'll see how it goes. It's interesting that it was brought up so early on, I think.
And we also had reference today in the synthesis of the deliberations or the interventions that there was apparently some discussion, or at least mention, of the possibility of what has been described as deaconesses, which in the Instrumentum Laboris, or the blueprint for the Synod, refers to trying to find ministries for women who play such a vital role for the life of the church and the life of people in the Amazon. This is probably being one of the most controversial topics that we can discuss over the next few weeks.
Yes.
So the question now is there any consensus or will at all even to go down this path, laden as it is with landmines and massive theological problems?
Plus we've had these two in-depth studies, one recently and one I think 20 years ago, saying that there wasn't a need for women deacons, at least in the universal church. And so if that does happen, obviously it will go against those two guidelines. But we'll see. It's hard to tell what the consensus is in the Synod Hall right now, of course, because we're still early on and we don't know what they're saying. But there is that. And
we don't know if it's simply because there's a reference that somebody talked about it in an intervention. Is this going anywhere? Is there any serious discussion about it? This is simply in the list of things that were discussed yesterday and this afternoon.
This is one of the weaknesses we have of the modern synods, is that in the past you'd see exactly who said what in a summary that was given to you. Now we don't know who says what or how much that subject was particularly broached. And now, so we just have to guess really or take it from our relators, how much was really discussed in the Synod Hall. And but they seem to be giving a very transparent picture of what's been happening.
Yeah, well, my last question for you is your impressions of how the press conference went today. I remember last year at the Synod on Youth, it could get a little contentious at times. The mood here seems a little more, I wouldn't say placid, but I think there's a little less contentiousness among some of the press with the Sala Stampa.
Yes, I think so. Well, I think, yes, some of the issues aren't quite so charged. And I think if you remember, there was the whole LGBT issue, which a lot of people thought was being used to, people were using the Synod, the Youth Synod, to push that through. There doesn't seem to be that, that particular sort of highly charged issue, but these other ones are of no less concern in many ways for a lot of people,
right?
Especially the women deacons and the Viri Probati.
But as Dr. Paolo Ruffini, one of the heads of the communications dicastery, pointed out, this is just basically the second day of the actual deliberations, so we have a long way to go and a lot to discover and to find out where the Synod Fathers are on these issues.
Yes, there's still a long way to go, but certainly some interesting topics are being brought up, also in the press conference.
And more to come.
Yep.
All right, Edward Penton, National Catholic Register, thanks so much.
Thanks, good to be here.
Well, thanks so much for joining me again here on EWTN News' daily updates on the Synod of Bishops here from Rome, Vatican City. Please visit EWTNnews.com for all of our reporting. You can go to individual entities as well, the Catholic News Agency, the ASI Group, ACI Stampa, ASI Prensa, as well as the National Catholic Register, Church Pop, and EWTN News Nightly. We'll be covering the Synod throughout, so please stay with us. Until next time, take care and God bless.